Hello, everyone, and welcome to Getting Started with IT Asset Management with our partner, CG4 Asset Tracking. So Mike, I'm going to have you close the Teams on there.
It keeps popping up, and I don't know why.
And as we get started, my name is Tabitha Ishman, and I'm the Marketing Manager of Excalibur Data Systems. And I just wanted to welcome all of you to the webinar today. And then I'm just going to jump into a few logistics before we go ahead and get started. The lines are muted and the webinar is being recorded. A recording will be sent via email to all participants tomorrow, and we'll answer questions at the end in a Q&A session, but you can feel free to ask questions at any time just by typing them into the question window. And now I'm going to get into a little bit about Excalibur Data Systems. We are a leading edge consulting firm guiding organizations through their digital transformation journey. We work with strategic partners just like CG4 and leverage best of breed enterprise service management technologies. And in doing so, we help create next generation solutions for our customers. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about CG4, who's been a longtime partner of Excalibur Data Systems. CG4 has over 20 years of experience, and their robust solution has been helping clients in many industries, such as healthcare, financial, government, education, and many more. CG4 supports Apple and Android, and including integrated scanners, tablets, and smartphones. With an off-the-shelf implementation, CG4 can have you scanning assets by the end of the day. And you can go ahead and visit their website at cg4assettracking.com. Now, logistics are done, so I have a lot of great content for our presenters to present to you today. So to kick us off, I'd like to introduce Mike Fuson, Owner, VP, Senior Solutions Architect of Excalibur Data Systems.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. We're going to get into a lot of fun stuff, but I want to introduce my co-host here, Will Barrows from CG4. Will, thank you for joining us.
Mike, thanks for having me.
And Will and I have already produced some extended tech talks, which you'll find on our YouTube channel, where we talk all about asset tracking and barcoding and RFID tagging and all kinds of fun stuff. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper into it in today's session. So kind of our overview agenda. So why is IT asset management and the CMDB so important? Why, how and why scanning can make a dramatic difference in your IT asset tracking efforts, how to choose a scanning software to enhance your CMDB and your asset management efforts, extending your reach across the enterprise, and some tidbits on getting some buy-in from upper management. Well, we want to start off today with a poll from those of you that have joined us today. So are you presently, and Tabitha's going to pop the poll up there for us, are you presently using scanning technology, either barcode or RFID? And yes, you're doing it quite effectively, all the way down to what is RFID or even barcode scanning. So we're going to give everybody a moment to kind of respond to that quick poll, and then we'll dive into our details. So Tabitha, let's see those results. So right about where we expected pretty much everyone to be at this point. No, we'd love to, or yeah, we're using it, but not quite as effectively as we would like. So hopefully you'll glean some great information out of our presentation today. So we're going to start off with why is IT asset management and the CMDB, why they're so important. What I see from an ITSM perspective is that highly mature organizations make the CMDB the center of the universe. The CMDB is going to drive change management. It's going to drive your problem management efforts. It's going to drive your incident management efforts where configuration items are involved. And that effectively leveraging the CMDB affords you a greater visibility of your assets. You know, for example, dependency mapping, how are they tied together? Understanding historically what's gone on with particular assets, and provide the details to help you make better decisions. Some base case examples of that are somebody's calling in with a problem with their laptop. if you have an entire history of everything that's gone on with that particular laptop within your CMDB tied to that asset, you can see, is this a recurring problem? So maybe the laptop needs to go out for repair or have a part replaced. Or perhaps you're seeing 2 or 3 laptops that are having a similar issue, and you can start to draw parallels where maybe, we got a bad batch from HP and they all have broken network cards or what have you. And looking at the details to be able to make better decisions, as you mature as an organization with your CMDB, you have better visibility into what's happening. So as the Change Advisory Board, your CAB, is making decisions, they understand what the true impact of a change may be. The folks that are entering that change have the ability to see what impact that change may have. I think back to my early days, 1 or 2 or 10 or 20 years ago, as we were working with customers that were just getting into a more formal change management process. And what you were seeing from those customers was that the DBA team wanted to do an update on a particular database cluster, and at the same time, the server team wanted to do updates to the cluster, say basic Microsoft patching, and they would collide. And you'd end up having problems that you had to fix that you wouldn't have had if there had been better coordination. Or customers that are going to take down a node of some type and weren't aware that something had been moved to that node or moved over to that particular database cluster, and all of a sudden the system goes offline that nobody expected. So having a robust and an accurate CMDB helps do these things. And then also when you're doing the refresh of older equipment, the efficiency and the accuracy of the refreshed assets is better with accurate location information. You want to refresh everything in a particular location, you can do that. And then regular scanning helps the effort to manage the correct number of software licenses and maintenance policies. So all of this starts to drive to really what we want to talk about with CG4, right? We want a robust, we want an accurate CMDB, but sometimes that's a hard thing to achieve because it can be very time consuming to properly maintain that CMDB. So why scanning makes such a dramatic difference? We're able to do more frequent and in a more accurate manner, complete audits and inventory of assets that could be in a data center, et cetera. And Will and I are going to get into some of this. Improving processes such as moves, add, changes, going beyond just the auto discovery tools, because what if that thing isn't being discovered? What if it's a device that's not on the wire, but still is an asset that needs to be tracked? And scanning makes the effort to update the asset simpler for your field technicians as well, so they'll be more likely to do the desired update. So, well, let's talk a little bit about how scanning technology really starts to make a huge difference for organizations and their IT asset management efforts.
Well, the interesting thing is that every customer is just a little bit different from everybody else, and they've got, pain points that that they need to have accurate information, and they need to have it be timely to update their system so they can make good management decisions. So, like, for example, one of our customers that we worked on is they had a bunch of temporary help that would have these scanners that they loan out to the help to go do the work, and then they need to get them back at the end of the day, and they were having a problem getting them back, and so that was their pain point. But you can use barcode scanning for doing things like that as part of managing your assets, and there's every other little thing that you can think of. You can do a barcode scan or an RFID scan to kind of make sure that the data is accurate. I mean, is that kind of what you were thinking?
Yeah, well, so let's break that down into some use case examples that we talk with customers about all the time. You want to do an audit of the data center, and you want to go rack by rack, right? Oh, that is a very painful process for a lot of organizations, because somebody's got to jot down all the stuff that's in that rack. Whereas with a barcode scan, which is quicker, and then even quicker than that is an RFID tag, you're able to scan all of the assets that are in, say, that particular cabinet. And the way CG4 operates, it could tell us, hey, we found an asset that according to our data isn't supposed to be in this rack. And okay, let's mark, we know we've scanned it, we know we've inventoried it, now let's figure out how it ended up here. But you're able to go rack by rack by rack and very rapidly and very accurately determine all of the items that are in there. And so, where a lot of organizations may limit the number of full audits that they do just because it's so time consuming, we're able to do audits more frequently because we can do them quicker and more accurately.
One of the customers that brings to mind is that it took them weeks to do the audit of their data center, and they started by just putting barcodes, and then they put RFID tags on things, and then pretty soon they were able to do an audit of the same place in a few hours instead of a couple of weeks. And they were able to do just what you say, do those audits more frequently just to make sure that all the information is accurate.
Well, and then you start to move into things like moves, adds, and changes, right? You have a whole department that you want to move their equipment. Well, by being able to scan the items that you've got a list of items that need to be moved, and they can scan all the items that they're moving and make sure things match up and they end up in the correct location. But you can go kind of a step further than that from an add, moves, changes standpoint, can't you, Will? Where you're able to track actually that the asset's in transit.
One of the fun things that a couple of customers have said over the last week is that they would love just to know that if they're transferring things from one stock room to another, they would love to scan it as they load it onto a truck, and then at the destination, scan it when they load it off the truck. And in my mind, I think, yeah, that's a pretty simple thing, but they just were tickled that they could have that visibility for items that are in transit.
Yeah, and it's something that, as we've worked on a number of projects together, a number of our customers do, where a central receiving location is receiving, 500 new laptops, but they're going to be sent out to 5 different locations, and they're able to actually do some of the tagging, creation of stub records within the CMDB for when they eventually are discovered, and know which assets are in transit to what location, and then on the receiving end at that location, scan them as they come off, and they know, okay, now they've moved to that location or to a storeroom or what have you, and be able to track that transit. And when we talk about this, like, hey, as businesses, for us, this is a new, this is a really cool thing, and they were so tickled they could do it. But UPS and FedEx and the post office have been doing this for years, right? How do you know where your UPS package is when you go and scan the tracking number? We're not talking about something that is a different concept than something that all of us are used to seeing, all of us are used to being able to do. This is really bringing this into the context of our organizations and being able to track where these things are, and as they're moving, and also improving that accuracy. Because I think about one of our customers, they were moving some departments around, and I know some of our customers that are on here, you guys have those frequent reorgs that occur, right? And so we're going to move people from this team from the 8th floor to the 7th floor, and a lot of times it may be a facilities team that may be handling the physical move of those items based on rules for the building or rules for the organization, and to make it very, very easy for them to zip zap a whole bunch of things and say these are all the things that are moving. If there's something that's missed, it can be caught, and if things are moved that we didn't know were there, we can catch those as well. It's what improves that accuracy for us as organizations. But looking at that also then beyond the auto discovery tools, right? If something's not on the wire, we may not know where that is. But in our scanning process, we know where that has now the location it's being reported in. And I think about different devices that can be in a rack that might not be attached to the wire for one reason or another, even if it could. Those things are scanned, and we know where certain PDUs are, or where a UPS is that might not be connected to the network. We're able to find those locations. And so it allows us to update those assets and their data within the CMDB, but also discover things that might be out of band that require somebody to take a look at and say, okay, how did this happen? How did this get moved?
And one of the things that came to mind when you were just saying that, for the assets that are offline is, sometimes customers have all the equipment they need to fulfill some requirements or some orders, but they got it stuck in a stock room that's where everything's offline. And if they're not doing a regular inventory of that stock room, they're not going to know they've got it there, and they're going to buy some more because they think they're out.
Yeah, and also often those regular inventories aren't done as frequently because they're painful. Here's a way to make that inventory check much easier, and understand what are in those stock rooms, and then also being able to update for the field technicians. One of the things that you look at is, as a technician goes out, they can confirm that the asset that they're going to work on is the asset that it's saying they're supposed to work on. It helps with that accuracy, helps to make sure that we're doing the things that we need to do. All this drives back to making sure that our CMDB and that our assets are being able to be kept up to date. And that's something to note, is that CG4 does integrate with most of the top tier IT service management systems, and has the ability to integrate with anybody that has an available API. The example of the things we've worked on, as many of you that are on with us know, Excalibur is a Sharewell partner, and we've done a lot of work with the Sharewell Service Management platform, and have done a number of things with the team at CG4 to expand that integration and have more data available within the CMDB as you're doing these scanning activities. And Brady, you brought the other kind of use case to the table, which is those assets that need to be checked out. And we worked on a proof of concept effort for a customer recently, and we're moving towards implementation of being able to check out things like portable scanners. This is in the case of a distribution center type scenario. Portable scanners, headsets, different devices they're going to use, where you can scan their badge, and then you can check the assets out to them and check them back in. And what we did, in that use case example, was we actually enhanced the integration between CG4 and Sharewell, that all of that audit trail is also written to the CMDB. So for a particular asset, you can actually see last check-in, last check-out, who did it, and all of the details that are being tracked. So it gives you a lot of rich capability to be able to manage your CMDB quite effectively, improving that accuracy.
Yeah, that audit history is very useful. It gives you the whole picture, and you don't have any gaps of what was going on with this asset during this period of time.
Yeah, and that's the whole goal, right? We want it to be faster, but sometimes you can't have. You can either have, it can be faster or it could be more accurate, but you can't have both. And that's the beauty of barcode and RFID scanning. You can get both. It's going to definitely be more accurate, and it's going to be much faster because somebody's not trying to type in a 17 alphanumeric character serial number in. We zap it. It's going to be accurate. We're going to know everything we need to know about what's happened with that particular asset specifically. But one of the things that
to zap that serial number is like a couple of seconds, versus if I were trying to key it in, I'd have to reread it and reread it. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
That's one of the challenges, right? But one of the questions we get asked a lot is, how do I choose the scanning software that I'm going to use? A lot of people think, well, you'll hear from ITSM vendors, oh yeah, we support scanners, and they're being 100% truthful. Yes, they support scanners. A scanner is nothing more than an alternative keyboard, and you can put the cursor in a box on the form and zap the barcode and it'll fill it in. What we're talking about is something completely different here, where it's a platform that's helping you to do the work that you need to do, and at the same time updating your CMDB while you go about it. So in looking at scanning software that's out there, and CG4 is in kind of a unique space. There aren't a lot of companies that do what CG4 does. So does the scanning software easily integrate to your ITSM, ESM system, CMDB, or other backend platform? Some customers may have an ITSM system, but they use a separate CMDB platform. Can the scanning software be configured in various ways to assist with the processes that bring the efficiency to the organization, while at the same time appropriately updating the CMDB records? And we're going to get into a little short demo of some of the things we can do with CG4, but within CG4, you have the ability to build these modules that really have workflow behind them.
Right.
Maybe talk a little bit about that.
I mean, it's really easy because, like I was saying earlier, every customer has just a little bit different needs in terms of, I want to track this asset when it does this and when it does that and when this happens. And we've made our software, for example, able to make these little modules that line up with steps in your asset lifecycle, and you can configure one to match what your requirement is without it having to take hours of programming or a programmer on staff. And that way it's really flexible to kind of fit to a customer's needs, and they can make as many modules as they like to fit all of their different steps.
And an example of that was in this proof of concept effort that we did. One of the things they want to be able to do is on a check-in or check-out of those devices in a distribution center, if they go to check it out and it looks like the device has a problem, it's got a cracked screen or what have you, and may need to go for repair, being able to very easily scan that device and have it automatically, I like to call it automagically, but automatically create an incident within the system where they can put in some details of what may be going on with that particular device, so that it can go through a proper repair process, and is then fulfilling your ITSM goals, where these things are all tracked in their efforts. But the other thing, and this was something that was something I had not thought of until Will and I got into really talking about the capabilities of scanning and the things we can do, is does your scanning software have the ability to scan both barcodes and RFID tags? And I really saw this in action as we went through and we're working with the customer to spec out a project where leveraging RFID tags, it unlocks a whole bunch of other capabilities. Not only can it be faster than, because you can scan a whole rack at once, but one of the capabilities is, from a data center perspective, is putting RFID readers around the doors. Any piece of equipment that goes through the door gets scanned and logged, that it left the data center, or equipment that came into the data center. It gives you all instantly, everything that's on that cart is going to be grabbed by those RFID readers.
I mean, those RFID
blew my mind.
They help automate the capture of those movements right through the doorways, and both from a functional standpoint of just want to know where it is, but also from a security standpoint, there's a lot of places that and data centers included, that would want to know, hey, we just saw an asset pass through the door. It's a security concern. Let's look at the video to find out who was taking it. And from a security standpoint, people love that capability.
Right, and this starts to marry to your other processes. Was this part of a change that was expected, or is it something that occurred and we weren't expecting, and we need to delve deeper into what's going on? And then, finally, one of the other things that is a common question when you're looking at choosing a scanning package is, does the scanning software do everything in your asset lifecycle management? So do we have the ability, again, by tying into a CMDB or an ITSM platform with a CMDB, do we have the ability to manage our lifecycle processes? And we talked about, with CG4, the modular capability of being able to create your own modules to manage that whole process. So from we're scanning it and bringing it into a stock room for future distribution, think of a laptop, all the way to processes that include the retirement and possible recycling or donation of that laptop can be managed and leveraged through a platform like CG4 with that data updating the CMDB.
Yeah, I mean, scanning makes it so much easier to try to get your arms around the quality and the accuracy and the timeliness of your data. That I think that for those that aren't doing it, all of the dreams that you can imagine of that this will improve this and this will improve that, probably true, but it's a good thing.
It's amazing the things that we can do. And then, that kind of leads us into extending your reach across the enterprise, so broadening your asset management strategy. We've talked about so often where customers want to tie this data into a fixed asset system, things that are being tracked by accounting. And so as you get into managing your audit controls and all sorts of other details. But an important part of the process is applying it across all the life cycle stages, understanding TCOs, and optimizing the use of assets. It's not limited to IC access alone, though. These solutions could be extended to other assets in the organization that they wish to track. So you get everything from warehouse equipment to phones to headsets, TVs, projection equipment, game systems. And so some of you that might be chuckling out there going, game systems, I think Mike's been doing this too long and he's lost his mind. I actually think about some of our hospital networks that we work with, and in their children's hospitals, they will have game systems. It could be an Xbox or a PlayStation or what have you. I'm an NES guy. I actually go back to a television and Atari, but you can track those
those were
assets.
Awesome times.
Yeah, those are very awesome times. And the game systems haven't gotten any less expensive. The new Xbox is $500 for the Xbox. These are expensive assets. You start talking about the games and everything else, you can have quite an investment as an organization. But being able to track those assets and where those assets are is really the whole point of this. We're not limited to IT assets alone. As some of our customers who are on the line now know, you can track assets that are outside of IT. It could be I saw one of our utility customers on here, being able to track the radios that are in vehicles. Those are expensive pieces of equipment. And where are those radios? And did that radio require a replacement? Those aren't things that are Wi-Fi enabled and plugged into the wire, but they're an expensive asset that the organization is trying to manage. So where are all these things? And being able to manage the life cycle, something is in repair and a loaner's been given, and or what have you, as far as your processes are concerned. You have these expensive assets that as an organization you've invested in. Being able to track them and know where they are is great. And that's one of the little hidden secrets of CG4 is we can track these within our IT service management CMDB, but CG4 also has its own CMDB that can be leveraged.
Right. We have a standalone system that sometimes customers use while they're preparing for their enterprise level system, which may not be quite ready for a year or several months, and so they'll use our standalone system as a gap there, and we have many customers that enjoy it just fine.
And so those capabilities exist in one platform to do all of these wonderful things for your organization. And then the challenge always is, okay, how do we gain buy-in from management, right? This is all sounds great, Mike and Will, I'm ready to sign up, but how am I going to convince my my stakeholders that this is something that we need to do? well, first of all, we reach out to us. We need to talk to you because we can help you in that process. But you're looking at your return on investment. How quickly are we going to see that return? And surprisingly, what a lot of customers don't realize is the initial investment and the TCO is not as much as you think it might be. Leveraging these technologies is something that can be done, and we've worked together with many customers that had maybe an older system that had been custom built or cobbled together from a couple of different products, and they already have scanners. Now CG4 works with almost all scanners that are available out there, and there's options where you don't have to necessarily buy an actual fancy schmancy scanner. You could use your cell phone.
Right. There's a wide range of scanning devices that can fit your need. Like you can do everything from the ruggedized integrated scanners that cost a little bit of money. You can use your smartphones. You can use Bluetooth scanners that pair with your smartphones. You can use little wand scanners, kind of like the ones that can plug into your USB port. So we support a lot of scanner devices so that you can pick and choose what's going to be the best fit for your team.
Right, and so we're able to contain some of that initial investment, and then the TCO is actually when we're able to when we can sit down with you and share it with you, you'll be kind of blown away. It is never as much as anybody thought they were going to get into. There's a lot of value that's being brought to the table. But you also look at things like accounting for compliance and external audit requirements are going to reduce the stress on the team and on management, because that your accuracy is there. There's less opportunity for error because you're scanning this information. So the data is stored, and the amount of data you're able to work with is based on the amount of data that you have in there, but you're able to pull out everything that's in a rack very quickly. And that's the other thing, is it drives that employee efficiency. The time per audit, the time per project, those things are all impacted and lessened because we're able to do it more quickly and more efficiently. We also have seen it reduce unnecessary purchases. Will and I like to trade stories of crazy stuff that folks have done where they all of a sudden now have scanning technology available to them, and they're doing what I like to call a hard target search in a building to find all of the assets, and all of a sudden they get into a warehouse dock and find out that there's an entire it's true story, folks, true story. Had a client put a brand new phone system in, and then they discovered another brand new phone system sitting on their loading dock, and it had been purchased
that doesn't sound like good procurement there.
Yeah, well, it was one of those things that was transitional. It was the organization that had been acquired by this client was in the middle of had just completed their procurement process, and some things slipped through the cracks, and it had been delivered and nobody knew it was there. Or we talked to some of our hospital customers where they go through an acquisition of a hospital, and equipment's been purchased and it was delivered and rolled into an OR suite that's due for renovation, and they all of a sudden happened to one of our clients, found 2 portable x-ray machines, brand new, still shrink wrapped, sitting in one of the rooms, because people aren't going in there every day, right? And with being able to do that hard target search, they were able to identify these assets. If they weren't tagged, get them tagged, and get them into service, and say, okay, hold on a second, let's slow down our purchasing here. We don't need to purchase those things. Or also reduce software license costs when you know that equipment's being retired, and you can do that in a very accurate and quick manner. And then also managing assets when employees switch organizations. Typically that's an internal thing as they switch departments or whatnot, knowing what assets are going where in an employee add, move, or change. Property taxes that you may be paying, or some sort of use taxes on equipment that's unused. Being able to do more regular and more frequent audits and reviews helps to reduce some of those costs. And then really, as we talked about, the visibility on in-transit assets, where they're moving from location to location, and knowing where those assets are while in transit, where they wound up, and then being able to scan that stockroom once a week rather than the once a month inventory that was being done. These are important things that will help us gain, buy-in from management, and all drive. These are efficiencies we see over and over again, gained by clients. Will you want to comment on some of that? I mean, just some of the things that we've talked about blow my mind, of the, like, pushing stuff through doors and boom, we know everything that moved out or in.
Yeah, it's just really pleasing to the customers when they are able to put just a couple of simple little processes in place, and it enhances their ability to do their own, asset management. Okay, so I had one lady that I'm thinking of right now that when she saw the functionality, she said, it takes me weeks to do this stockroom inventory, and now it just takes me like a couple hours. And she's one of those ladies that would be running up to you and giving you a hug and thanking you for helping her with her asset tracking. And it's just whatever's important to the customer, you can gain so much just by doing a couple little steps with barcode scanning or RFID.
So what I want to do, we've got everybody excited, right? Okay, this stuff sounds really, really cool. What does this look like? So Brady, what I want to do is I want to turn this over to you, or Brady, Will. Brady's on with us as well. Brady's from CG4
Right.
as well. And we'll have you show us a little bit about how CG4 operates. It's
Okay.
actually, I always get excited about it. I think it's just so cool.
All right, well, let me see if I could turn on my screen here. All right. All right. Do you see my screen, Mike?
We can see it. Great. Yes.
Okay. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes and show a couple of sample transactions. On my right, I've got the this Zebra scanner plugged in, and I think my webcam's plugged in, but this is the scanner that I'm using. And this one happens to be a barcode scanner. It's got a built-in barcode scanner that comes out the end of it. And this one also happens to be RFID enabled. And so I can do either one with this scanner. And this screen that you might be able to see on the right on here is the same screen that I've got displayed on the right side of my screen there. So that way you can see what my scanner's doing while I'm scanning a couple of barcodes for you. All right, so I'll just do a couple of sample transactions. Like some customers, they have their assets brought into Sharewell with their like an advanced shipping notice or a data feed or something like that. But let's just say that you wanted to add some new assets from scratch on the handheld scanners. And so on the right, Mike was mentioning earlier about all the different modules that you can create inside CG4, for example, that line up with the steps in your asset lifecycle. And so I'm just going to grab one of these ones that does the bulk new asset creation. And if you've got locations and you put a barcode on the location, you can scan that barcode. So I just scanned a barcode for the stockroom. And then I pick the type of asset that I'm adding here. And in this case, I'm just going to add in some Dell equipment. And I'm going to say it's a workstation. And I'm going to say I want the status to be in stock. And then they just would go through. I've got this module set up to capture a serial number and an asset tag as unique identifiers for the asset. And so you could set it up to only capture serial number if that's the step that you want to do. But let me just start by scanning a serial number there. There's serial number 13, and there's the asset tag that I put on there. And let's capture another one here. There's serial number 14 and asset tag number 14. And let's just create one more. There's serial number 15 and asset tag 15. So if we take a look at that, so those assets, and we come back over here and we do a refresh in our Sharewell instance, those assets, those new assets are starting to drop in. And so now we've got the new assets that we've created, just doing the ad hoc way. And so now, so we've got our new assets in there. We've got the unique identifiers. We've got a status of in stock. We have a date time of when it happened. We have an indicator of which CG4 module was used to do the work. We've got the name of the person that did the work and the location. So we can see that those couple of assets are in the stockroom. And so that's a sample of one thing that you can do to add new assets. So then one of the next things in an asset lifecycle might be to check an asset out to someone. And so you can use something like this module where you first go in and you indicate, you can put in some search criteria, and then you can say which user you want to issue the assets to. So let's say we want to issue some assets to Henry Bryce. And so then if we do some of these same assets here, let's see, I've got 13 and 15 that I added. So I'm going to scan barcode number 13 here. And I'm going to scan number 15. And so now if we take a look at it and we do a refresh here, and those updates should start dropping in. Yeah, so you can see that these, and I've got my updates sorted by date time so that all the most recent ones are at the top. But here are those two assets, 13 and 15. You can see that they are now assigned to Henry Bryce, and they've got a status of active, whereas before they had a status of in stock. And so then, as another example step in your asset lifecycle, we could have it be where someone does an inventory in that stockroom. So like, let's say that they're out doing this, the part of what Mike and I have been talking about is if you just do a regular inventory of all the places that you're needing to keep track of your assets, whether it's in a stockroom or out in the cubicles or out in a warehouse, it's just going to help you stay on top of everything. And so if you go into like something like this and say, all right, I need to do an inventory of my assets, let's see, if we go into, I'll select that stockroom location again, just because those two new assets are in there. Let me pick that. So let's say you're going into that stockroom. You could do your inventory with this module where you just scan the items to mark them as having been inventoried. But you can also do it with this style of a module where you say, I'm going to pick my location on the first screen, and then on the second screen, it shows you the assets that are expected to be found in that location. And then as you go through and you scan each of the items to do your inventory, it marks them as having been found in the end as far as doing the inventory. And it also displays the asset attributes that you've chosen to have the users be able to see. And then they just go through the room and they just keep scanning the assets and marks them as having been inventoried. And then as you finish that inventory, you know that your information in your stockroom is complete and up to date of what is actually in the stockroom. And so you can see that we just got new date timestamps from the inventory module that Will did in the stockroom. And so then at some point, you would probably want to check an asset back in. So a sample module you could do would be something like this, where you say, all right, I'm going to check the assets back in, and maybe I'm going to check it into a room. Maybe I'm going to check it back into the warehouse. But I'll just say that I'll just scan the location here. So let's say that I'm going to check them back into this building A, room 1, or floor 1, room 103. And then, but it would probably be more likely something out in your warehouse when you're checking it in, but it's up to you to decide. And then you'd go through and you'd scan the assets. And so if you check it back in, So like if we check this one in, number 13, and then you do a refresh here on your Sharewell system, you can see that 13 is now back in stock, and it's located in this room 130. And you can see that Henry Bryce is no longer responsible for that asset. And so it gives you, just the simple accountability of who's got all the company's assets, and have they turned it in when they switched locations or something like that. And then I'll just show you one more thing to do that I think might be kind of a fun way to end the demo here. Is within CG4, I mentioned that it's not painful to make these new modules that line up with steps in your asset lifecycle. And so what I'm going to show you is how to configure a module to do something like a retirement. So this is a CG4 server, and one of the things that this is the list of modules that I currently have in my system. And so what I'm going to do is to create this module, I'm going to create a module to retire assets. I just want to show you how easy it is. And so I look through my list of modules, and I say which one is close to the style of module that I want to do here. And I say, this inventory QSC one is pretty close, so I'm going to hit copy on that. Now, so I've created the new module. Then I say, what do you want to call it? And I'm going to call this the Mike Retire module. And so as soon as I give it a name, then I decide, which fields I want to have visible. And we have a variety of, module templates that you can use to give different user experiences on the handheld. But in this case, I've got location set to be the first field selected, and the asset tag set to be the second one. And so I've got the first field, location, set to be a persistent field. And so I think to myself, yeah, this is what I want to do for my retirement module. So I just come down here and I save that. So now I've created the module. The second step that I need to do is decide if I want to put a rule into it. And so here's the rules screen, and you say, yeah, I want to put a rule into this new module. So I go down and I select the Mike Retire module, and I say I want the default value. We have different rule types that you can use here, but I want a default value for the status to be set to retired. So anytime one of my scanning techs uses this module, the status will be set to retired. So I save that. So now I've created the module, put a rule into it. The next thing I need to do is give that module to one of my user profiles. And so here I just say, you know what, in this admin profile, I want them to be able to see the Mike Retire module. And so I add that. So now what happens is the next time that someone on the handheld logs in, and they're going to see that new module that we just configured. And so now let's try it and see if I did everything correctly. So let's say that we want to retire some assets out on the dock. And so I'm going to scan. I think I got the dock. Well, I got this warehouse location, but anyway, that's good enough. And so now if I want to retire those assets, I just come back over here and I scan the assets that I want to retire. So in this case, I'll scan 15 and I'll scan 13. And if you take a look at that and you do a refresh here, you can see that those two assets have been retired, 13 and 15. And they were done by the CG4 module called Mike Retire. And there it captured the location where they were standing when the assets were retired. And so that's kind of, it only took us a couple of minutes to make a new CG4 module and apply it and push it out to your users and have your users scanning your assets and doing what you want them to. And, one thing that you could do is if you have RFID tags on your assets, you can also do RFID if you've got an RFID handheld. And so I've got a couple of RFID tags here I'm going to scan. So I just scanned some RFID tags that are sitting right there on the wall. And so all of these assets starting in D986 those are going to start dropping in here. And so I didn't have to scan each individual barcode. I just pulled the trigger once and it read all 6 of those and retired all of them. And so anyway, Mike, I mean, that's just kind of a little high level overview of the different types of steps you can do with your asset management, and how easy it is to configure new modules, and the benefits of using RFID whenever it's appropriate. I mean, sometimes you'll want to update one specific asset, but other times you want to take a pallet of items and just pull that RFID trigger and update all of them. But anyway, Mike, back to you.
All right. Hey, thanks, Will. We really appreciate that. So as we're winding down our webinar here, we want to open the floor to questions. Tabitha, I think we may have a few questions out there. For those of you that are with us, go ahead and if you have a question, type it into the Q&A section, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that folks have.
Yeah, so we'll give everybody a couple moments to do that, but in the meantime, one of the most asked questions that came in is what phases or duration and resource effort are required to fully deploy CG4?
Well, that's a good question. So the to deploy CG4 is probably the simplest part of your overall effort, because if you don't have, you'll need to put barcodes or RFID tags on all of your assets, and that's going to take a little bit of time. But as far as deploying CG4, it's not bad. I mean, we've already got the out-of-the-box integration with Sharewell worked out, so we just install it, connect to your Sharewell instance, and then we start scanning your assets. So that part's not a challenge. It's just the other things of, are my assets all tagged? And then the other part of the magic of doing all this is just thinking through what my business processes are and what they should be to help get my arms around all my assets. Mike, anything to add?
It's very straightforward. We have a map that's available to deploy the changes within the CMDB that are needed, and even to deploy the additional new integration efforts that we have worked together on to create the audit history, the audit logging from a scanning perspective. So you have that historical capability to do the deep look back into all the things that's gone on every time that CG4 has talked or has been asked to scan that device, and what exactly happened and who did it, and all of those sort of details. And that map is very simple to install and will work with anyone's standard Sharewell CMDB.
Awesome, thank you both. So another question that came in is maybe just reiterating, how does asset management software help in audits so that they can take it back to their upper management?
Yeah, Tabitha, what it really does is it improves the accuracy, and it reduces the time to be able to go through and grab all of that information. As you saw from some of the things that Will showed in a brief demo of a couple of capabilities that CG4 has, and ways that clients leverage it, being able to build those modules. And as you saw when he showed the set of rules, you can make as many of those fields mandatory as you may want, or have them as optional, depending upon the workflow and the use case that you have. And we see for clients in an audit, they want to make sure things are super accurate, so details are tracked. And CG4 is talking to your, in this example that we've done, our Sharewell CMDB, but we're not limited to Sharewell as the CMDB or service management platform. We have integrations to many of the platforms that are out there, but being able to talk back and forth so that you have accurately represented what your CMDB said was going on, and then now what CG4 is capturing. So if you're scanning an item to go ahead and look up, it'll tell you, hey, here's what Cherwell's telling me the current location is. That's wrong. And then you can move its location. Or as Will, you were showing with an inventory, hey, show me everything that's in here. And as I scan it, it's going to effectively check it off that we've got everything. So do I have an anomaly? It starts to drive folks to be able to do those things and do them in a very easy way.
A lot of things that we hear from our customers are that they just, they have some compliance issues that they have to, fit into and take care of. And so just the simple process of quarterly doing that inventory or annually, it takes a lot of heat off the organization. And to have that entire audit history to complement all of the accountability they want for the company's assets, it just gives the auditors, when they come in and they look at the quality of the information and the quality of the tracking, it just makes it more of a pleasant conversation rather than where's this asset? This is a $10,000 piece of equipment. You don't know where it is.
So a question we had that came in as well was, we're not licensed for Cherwell Asset Management. We don't need Cherwell Asset Management for CG4 to work with Cherwell. You could be using Cherwell Asset Management as your discovery platform, SCCM. You're not using a discovery platform, everything's manually entered. However you want. CG4 is talking directly to Cherwell and its CMDB to track and update the information within the CMDB itself. So those things can be used in a complementary way. We could be using CAM as our discovery tool, or CAM as a or SCCM or another discovery tool that may be feeding our CMDB, and then we're leveraging CG4 to validate that information. For some of our customers, as an example, from whatever discovery tool they're using, they may be pulling, for example, for servers and desktops, laptops, etc., an IP address. And based on that IP address and breaking down its octets, we may be able to determine its location. We've done this for a number of clients where they've got a location table based on what part of a subnet or part of a Class C network that those devices may be in. We're not really Class C, but we're really kind of moving up a couple of octets in a lot of cases. And that may tell us its location, X, and as it's reported in, that's where we think that it is. And all of a sudden we scan it in an audit and it's in a different location. Okay, well, how's that happening? And help us identify those anomalies. But Cherwell Asset Management as a additional platform to Cherwell is not required for CG4 and CG4's integration.
Awesome. With that, I think, Mike, I'm going to let you close this out. Will, if there's any additional insight you want to share, but thank you so much for presenting with us today.
Yes, well, thank you for joining me today. Thank you for all of our participants and those of you that are watching this via recording. We are happy, team at Excalibur and CG4 are happy to talk to you and provide a demo and share with you some of the amazing things that you can do with the CG4 platform married with your IT service management or CMDB platform that you may be leveraging. Thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Mike, it's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Will.